snap, fade route, back run of the end zone, 50-50 ball! Touchdown, Huskers! Nebraska wins its 5th national championship.
Giving you an inside look at everything going on in Husker Nation. This is the KLIN Husker Hour.
Kicks and deals the 2-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Strike 3. Jackson Brockett has the first 9-inning no-hitter for the Nebraska Cornhuskers since 1954, and he did it on his 12th strikeout.
Sunset, got it! Thunderdog, and then one! Exclamation point! Pump the brakes!
Now your hosts, KLIN contributor Cole Stukenholtz and sports director Nate Rohr.
Good Saturday morning. Ho, ho, ho. Welcome to a pre-Christmas edition of the KLIN Husker Hour. Cole Stukenholtz with Nate Rohr. Kenny Larrabee's got us up on the StreamYard. You can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter pages of KLIN. Also the Husker Hour Facebook page. A lot to get to. Evan Bland will join us shortly from Omaha World-Herald. He was at the Devaney Center for that fateful night. Volleyball's Elite Eight lost to Texas A&M, who, by the way, if you saw what they did, swept Pitt and are in the national championship match. We've got a lot of hoops to get to, a lot of fun hoops discussions. But first, Nate, we're going to get into some of the stuff that isn't as fun to talk about. We got to eat our vegetables before we get to the dessert. Mm-hmm. Famously, the dessert of Nebraska athletics is men's and women's basketball.
Always has been, always will be, as written by the gods themselves.
That's right. So, 5-star recruit, the prince who was promised, the legacy and the future, Dylan Raiola, no longer a Nebraska Cornhusker. Yes, that day has come. And it's not surprising. I wouldn't even say that it's a little disappointing, maybe. I don't know the best word to describe it, but I mean, I think about it this way. It's Nebraska in 2023, December, after that first rule season. Jeff Sims, not a good outcome. November, not a good month of football. You lose 4 straight to fall to 5-7. And then this 5-star legacy guy calls Rule and says, hey, I want to come there. And could he have said no? Sure. But yeah. I just think back to the Scott Frost, Joe Burrow thing with Adrian Martinez. Like, is he better than who we got? You know, that whole thing. Right. That thing, if Raiola goes somewhere else, he has success. He goes to the NFL, he has success. And at some point it comes out, oh, he called Matt Rule in December of 2023. He said he wanted to come to Lincoln. Rule turned him down. Like, he almost couldn't say no.
Yeah.
So that whole part of it, I think, yeah, I don't know that was the direction that Rule thought that he was taking this offense, and then Rule got Raiola fall into his lap, and so they tried to change it around him. I'm pretty sure he wasn't looking to build around a pocket guy. Just look at Jeff Sims, TJ Lateef, Trey Taylor. So, I mean, should you feel sad about this? I mean, I'll let you be the judge, Husker fan, but I think the potential was there. I think Raiola did improve in his sophomore season. I also think the shortcomings were well documented. I do think he would have been the best option for starting in 2026, but if you want to take this offense in a different direction, I think the argument's there for you probably should and would be better served having more of a dual threat, more successful runner style quarterback. Maybe make that change offensively so that you're not doing that in 2027. You do that in 2026. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that this argument has gone, this discussion has gone and will go, but ultimately it's, the outcome is the same. Nebraska's out shopping for a quarterback, and that guy will compete with TJ Lateef for the job for 2026.
Yeah, I'll go back to where you started when Dylan Raiola calls the program, or when the relationship sparks again, essentially, because remember, this thing was dead, when Matt Rule arrived. There was talk that Scott Frost didn't do what needed to be done to get Dylan Raiola in the fold. But, it's one of those deals where getting a guy like this, even putting aside sort of the offensive fit questions that his arrival brought about, it brought with it some problems because you're talking about a guy you feel like you need to win right now, and that was not Matt Rule's vision of the program when he took it over. He was going to build, he was going to develop, he was going to stockpile linemen, and so it was going to take a few years, and then you're right. There's sort of an inevitability. This is a lottery ticket. You're never going to turn down a 5-star player unless there are serious character issues, which there were not here. And so, but there are questions that come up of how good was the fit in, what Nebraska wanted to do offensively, and as you laid out, I think it's pretty clear that the vision for Nebraska's offense didn't necessarily include a pocket passer dropping back and being reluctant to run. You almost wonder if the coaching staff said, okay, he'll drop back here and we can lean on him a little bit so he starts running the football. But we'll deal with that. And they could never get him running the ball enough, sort of in their eyes. But there were just so many problems that, especially a quarterback of this style, because if you have a pure drop back quarterback, you instantly think, okay, we better be really good on the offensive line, especially at offensive tackle. And they swung and missed there. Pritchett took half a season to get settled in, and they had so many injury issues at the other tackle spot that they couldn't protect him. And I don't know how strong the pass block scheme was. It rushed the receivers you're going to go out and get. And so you wonder how much the presence of Dylan Raiola changed the plan for Nebraska football, and maybe not necessarily for the better, because I think they felt a pressure. I think they felt an impetus of, okay, this guy's the best quarterback we might get, so we've got our quarterback, and as we all know, in team building, it starts with a quarterback. You've got to have the quarterback, and then you can answer the other questions from there. And so they did a lot of bending and building around him and tweaking to fit what he needed. And while it makes a lot of sense what they did, at the same time it opened up other holes, and it left this program vulnerable in other places. And it also kind of sidetracked the larger vision for what Matt Rule wanted this program to look like. And as a result, there is a confusion about Nebraska's offensive identity. There is a confusion about what Nebraska football wants to be moving forward. And there's been, shuffling of assistant coaches, and there's just no definition right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You don't know who the quarterback's going to be. You don't know who's going to be running the ball. And those questions very likely will not be answered on December 31st. I mean, unless Isaiah Mosey or Quentin Ives or Nelson have a breakout game, now it's tough to see what this offense is going to look like moving forward, and that means Nebraska is going to be very active in the transfer portal to try and get the production on the offensive side of the ball in terms of skill guys. So it's just a tough spot right now for Matt Rule, and like you said, if you turn him down, if you say no, we're good, and frankly, Nebraska wasn't. I mean, what would Nebraska have done at quarterback the last 2 years if they didn't have Dylan Raiola? I mean, the picture is kind of grim if you go forward with Harburg, Sims, and God knows who else. I mean, it would have been rough.
Daniel KLIN.
No, Danny KLIN might have been interesting, but and maybe KLIN being not as high profile a recruit, maybe you have a little more balanced vision for the offense, and maybe it's more aligned with sort of the gradual process that I think Matt Rule was hoping to develop offensively. But it's just it was a tough spot, and you always want elite recruiting talent. You always want the top players coming here. And Matt Rule noted that. That was the big thing. That was arguably the most positive impact that Dylan Raiola had, that he made it acceptable as a 5-star to come to Nebraska. But that has to dovetail with on-field success, and that just didn't happen to the level that we were all hoping it would.
Yeah, it's the end of an era to a certain extent, and it potentially the beginning of a new one with this bowl game and beyond, of course, with TJ Lateef, getting reps in. Hopefully he's going to be as close to 100% as he can be for that game against Utah. And then, I mean, who knows what happens after that with the portal opening up January 2nd. And
Roll the dice.
And then you see what you can get. Somebody to come in and compete with him, somebody to come in and play running back and compete with whoever's here at that position. And obviously we've touched on it quite a bit. You gotta prioritize the lines as well. So there's a lot to do. There are a couple more hires on the coaching staff that were made this week. There's still a glaring omission, I think, that maybe Nebraska's trying to get something worked out to bring a guy to coach a D-line. Right now, it's Matt Rule with the backwards cap coaching the D-line for bowl preparations, which is fun. But yeah, there's a lot moving with the Nebraska football. Of course, the bowl game December 31st against Utah. KLIN. That one, Nebraska's a heavy underdog with Kyle Whittingham's last game as the Utes coach, and Utah just a generally better roster and has had better results over the last few years. They've run the heck out of the ball, and that's not a great matchup for Nebraska's defense. So we'll see how that all shakes out with Phil Snow running that over there, Dana Holgerson running the offense, and Matt Rule coaching in the trenches, back to his roots a little bit with that. So that is coming up for football. When we come back, and about his thoughts about this football team, what Nebraska should be prioritizing in the portal, and the Dylan Raiola scenario as well, whether it was, what we should think of that and his thoughts. Plus, Evan was in the Devaney Center for Nebraska and Texas A&M last Sunday. Definitely want to get his thoughts on the atmosphere and what this legacy of this team will be, because I think, unfortunately, they're going to be remembered for one loss and not 33 wins. But we'll chat about that with Evan. Plus, plenty of hoops. Time to talk to your kids about a top 15 Nebraska ball. That's all coming up here on the KLIN Husker Hour.
This holiday season,
This week, this is the KLIN Husker Hour on Lincoln's Husker Radio, 1499.3 KLIN.
Well, the comings and goings for Husker football have been aplenty, and of course, one of the best who covers Husker football and one of the friends of the show joining us here, Evan Bland from the Omaha World-Herald, back with us. Evan, good morning. How is your Christmas season treating you so far?
Morning, Cole. Yeah, happy Saturday. It's you do errands when you can, and then you're also checking to see who's entering the portal or whatever coaching changes are going on at any given time. So 'tis the season.
Yeah, it's definitely been a busy one, and obviously the headliner this offseason has been Dylan Raiola. The Husker quarterback will not return for his junior season. I guess twofold on this. Number one, why did it not work? And number two, what is Nebraska looking for in his replacement?
Well, I think both sides kind of reached a point where you just kind of felt like maybe it had maxed out, where from Nebraska's perspective, you think about what they invested in Raiola financially, certainly, but then also in terms of the coaches they surrounded him with, just the resources within the program, how they promoted him. And, they go to 2 bowl games, and that's no small feat around here, especially in the last 10 years. So you got to give them credit for that. But there was just never that breakthrough moment, and it just never really felt like Nebraska was on the doorstep of the college football playoff this year. And you wonder what would necessarily change to make that the case next year. And then I think from Raiola's perspective, sort of the same thing. I mean, he's somebody who's been aspiring to be an NFL player for a long time, grew up, the son of an NFL center. And I think he understands that to have the best chance to do that, he needed to put up strong numbers and be on a successful college team. And from his perspective, that he wasn't able to do that at Nebraska. So it does feel like, is it ever really mutual, right? Any breakup? Probably not. But I think this is close to it, just in terms of now Raiola gets a chance to test the market, go to a place maybe with a little bit more of an established culture, more established success, a place where he can be in that CFP mix next year. And Nebraska gets a chance, quite honestly, to restart itself on offense and say, okay, we need a guy who's functionally mobile, maybe in a way that Raiola wasn't, somebody who wouldn't command as much of the revenue share pie that they can then disperse to other positions of need on the team. So it's just funny because I think nationally people kind of sound the alarm and say, this is what's going on. But I do feel like locally there's kind of a sense of relief on both sides that a fresh start could do some good. And so, now you do pivot to that portal season, January 2nd to the 16th, when that window opens up. And I do think Nebraska is going to be looking for somebody who also has the ability to move a little bit more than maybe what Dylan did. I don't expect it to be just sort of a depth piece for the sake of depth. Like, this is a room that you're going to have to restock and have multiple guys that you feel like can give you chances to win games. TJ Lateef obviously will be in that mix, but you lose Jalen Gramstad, who has been that depth piece for a couple of years. Raiola's obviously out. And then Marcos Davila is the only other scholarship quarterback in that room, and he hasn't taken a college snap with the Huskers. So you definitely want to find one guy, probably a higher priced guy, maybe not, the DJ Lagway, Brendan Sorsby top end guys, but I do think there's room in sort of that next tier to find somebody who can, at the very least, compete to be that starter, potentially win that starting job over a younger guy in Lateef, and give Nebraska just a little bit more depth and options at that position as they turn to a pretty tough schedule in 2026.
Yeah, and then you've also got, I think, a need at running back. You've certainly got needs at both lines, if we're being honest. I don't know what the best approach is, but I know what I've seen in college football, and obviously Texas Tech invested heavily on the lines. I don't think that most folks out there who even watch college football a lot might even be able to name you the Texas Tech starting quarterback's name.
Right.
So the lines, I think, is where they might zero in first, should zero in first, but obviously quarterback and running back are hugely important, and it's very possible that those starters for 26 are even on the roster yet. How do you balance what you want to do, what you want to prioritize in the portal? Because they can't prioritize everything necessarily, though Rule has said they've got plenty of funds. Like he's made that a very big talking point in his comments this offseason. Where do you prioritize the needs, I think, of this this next team under Rule?
I think one thing you probably realize, Cole, is like, guys, you want to have an older team. I think that's been a big thing. You look at the CFP right now, and you do see, like, these are not, 19, 20-year-old rosters. Like, these are guys who are 21, 22, 23, and Nebraska still has been a young team. What's interesting, I think, about this month is it's incredibly valuable as an assessment tool for the returning coaches, but especially the new staffers that are on hand now to figure out, okay, what do we have? Who do we feel like we can develop into difference makers? And then how do you go out and supplement that in the portal? And, not every portal ad is equal, right? Like, Rocco Spindler was a portal ad. He was a 1-year guy this year, and versus, say, like a Williams Winery, who had 4 years of eligibility when he came back. And so sometimes you're taking guys that are essentially out of high school, whereas other times it is like a true free agent sort of situation. And so, I do think running back has to be a spot where you need to find a proven playmaker, even if Isaiah Mosey and Mekhi Nelson light it up against Utah. Like, I think you need somebody who's more of a college football veteran in that room with them. The Lions situation is going to be tougher because everybody has revenue share money this year.
Yeah.
And so, and those guys are hard to land. They're expensive, and everybody's going after them. So, yeah, Nebraska has more resources, but so do a lot of other teams that are no longer also having to rely on pay-for-play NIL, and it's more of a true, even market in that regard. So, sure, if you can find a guy or two like that to invest in, I think that would make sense. You're going to have that Dylan Raiola money that opens up, and CBS had reported that to be north of $3 million, and so you can get two or three pretty quality players for that amount of money. But I think it's funny that Nebraska's playing Utah on the 31st, because like that's sort of the blueprint that I think Nebraska looks at and says we can do that. Like, their skill players are okay, but it's the lines of scrimmage where they're really dominant. They have 2 tackles that incidentally won't be playing in the Las Vegas Bowl, but who are going to be first round, probably NFL draft picks. Like, that's the formula Nebraska wants to chase after. So I do think it's going to be the lines, a running back in some fashion. We'll see kind of where they fall in the quarterback market. Those to me are probably the priorities. And then maybe you look at a defensive back or a linebacker, maybe, see if anybody else kind of falls in your lap, or somebody you have a tie with, like a past relationship with a coach or something. But I agree. I think it's got to be the Lions. And then a couple of those skill spots on offense, if you can supplement that. And then the rest of it's going to fall to development of the young guys. And, hopefully a little bit more of a defined scheme, both on offense and defense, for what Nebraska wants to do, maybe than what they've had these last couple of years in the Rule era.
Evan Bland from the Omaha World-Herald joining us here, chatting Husker football. We'll get to volleyball here in a second as well, but it almost we kind of forget that Nebraska's playing in a bowl game, right? You went 7 years without one, and here we are, and we're talking about the portal. We're talking about the transferring quarterback, but by the way, Nebraska is playing in the Las Vegas Bowl here in a week and a half or so. What are we going to learn from the players on the roster, do you think, in this bowl game, and how could that potentially inform what Nebraska wants to do in the portal? Or do you think that hay's probably already in the barn? I don't know how much you can take one game against Utah that would be fundamentally different than the previous 12, but maybe that's not going to be the case. And that there, like you said, some players from Utah opted out. There's a few players from Nebraska who won't be playing. Emmett Johnson, Deshaun McCullough, to name a few. What can we learn from the Las Vegas Bowl, do you think?
Yeah, well, Matt Rule this week said he he said that they weren't going to put any stock in how TJ Lateef played in terms of how that affected their portal hunting for a quarterback. So I thought that was notable. To me, like, this game is more about who, because again, it's a very young roster, who on this group will use this month as a springboard into next year. And just look back to last year at the Pinstripe Bowl. Like, that was that month and that game were jumping off points for Donovan Jones at corner. It was a jumping off point for Vincent Shavers, who was able to play bigger snaps, and that led into this season for Luke Lindenmeyer at tight end. Like that, and you can talk to those guys now, and they all have said, like, yeah, that was the time when they were able to step into bigger roles and realize, hey, we're going to be looked at as leaders next year in positions of prominence. And so they were able to take off there. So, like, I do think there's a possibility that maybe one of the running backs does have a strong game, and that's able to give them momentum into next year. Maybe Isaiah Mosey or Mekhi Nelson have a big game. You know, you look at a guy like Tyler Knack, who's filling in for Rocco Spindler at right guard. Like, he's been a guy who's been a kind of a reserve piece for a couple of years. He's been a leader behind the scenes, but maybe he has a good game against his former team and is able to be in the mix next season as a senior blocker. You know, that kind of stuff. So, like, I kind of look at some of those younger guys and say, okay, this is your chance to show what you can do. You know, Justin Rhett is another guy, another defensive back. Matt Rule say, hey, this is going to be a guy who's going to get probably some extended action in the bowl game. Like, maybe he breaks out and this is his moment to realize, hey, I can hang at this level and play pretty well. So I think that's probably the area of the biggest value there. And then, you know, again, you make all the staff changes. You have a new defensive coordinator, multiple new offensive line staffers, you know, a new edge guy in Roy Manning. Like, all these guys are evaluating these players for the first time. So I think that's the other fascinating piece is you've got younger guys who've been on the roster for a couple of years, and now suddenly they're being looked at with fresh eyes. Maybe they're hearing some different kind of technique that could unlock something in them. So there's probably a little bit of an impact on the portal, but to me, it's really more about which guys do you feel like now can take that next step so that maybe you don't have to rely quite as heavily on that transfer market next month.
Yep. Yeah. A lot going on over on the football side, and very, very fascinating to see how that'll play out over the next couple of weeks with the bowl, and then the next month after that with the portal. Evan, we'll get you out of here on this. I know you were over at the Devaney for what was an incredible match between Nebraska and Texas A&M in the Elite Eight last Sunday, but ultimately a heartbreaker for Husker fans. Describe the feeling inside that arena for us, and how do you put this season in context? Because unfortunately, as brilliant as it was, All-Americans and players of the year on their roster, I think they're going to be remembered for one match, and it was a loss.
Yeah, I mean, the atmosphere was unbelievable. I know the TV ratings on ABC, it was like 1.2 million people were watching that match. And that fourth set was just unbelievable. When you go 37-35 and Nebraska had 10 set points and A&M had 3 match points. And it was, you know, the Devaney Center always, and that crowd always gets up for these big moments. But I actually felt like as it got into the mid 30s, like it was just exhaustion, emotional exhaustion from the crowd, where they're just like, I can't take this anymore. And Nebraska finds a way to finish that one off. And then, yeah, you lose in 5. And like that to me was a match where A&M absolutely made the plays. Like I don't think I'm going to look back on that match and say Nebraska blew it. I think A&M earned it, but I also think there were some just odd circumstances that also went against Nebraska. When you talk about Allie Check, their 6'4" opposite hitter, steps on a ball in warmups. Like, she would have made a difference in that match, in my opinion. And Bergen Riley under the weather, and her backup Campbell Flynn out, you know, who had been injured the previous week as well. Like, just little things like that, where it's just like, man, Nebraska had used its depth expertly all season, and just in that one match, because of circumstances, wasn't able to do it. So that was rough. And then I just think when you look back on the season overall, Cole, like, to me, it's a prime example of the result doesn't invalidate the process. And so, like, they did everything right this season in terms of how they managed the roster and and all that with a new coach, Danny Busman Kelly. And it just so happened that in that one match, some things didn't go their way, and some players weren't available to them, and they lose by 2 points at home, a place where they've only lost once in the NCAA tournament since they moved to Devaney in 2013. So I don't think this is a situation where you look at making major changes or have major judgments. I think you're disappointed. It's hard to win these sorts of matches, and I would fully expect Nebraska to reload and be back, maybe not undefeated, but in a similar situation as a national contender next year.
Yeah, they've still got that will be senior class going for the national championship. They'll be their last chance to do it. All right. Well, we appreciate the thoughts on the football and the breakdown of volleyball. Sorry, no time to talk NFL. I know you're a big Broncos guy. They're having a better season than my Chiefs, but
well, plenty of time. The Super Bowl is still a ways off.
Yeah. Hey, dare to dream, as Nate would say. Hey, Evan, really appreciate the thoughts, and we're happy to have you on all year long. Enjoy the Christmas season, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Cole. Appreciate it.
All right, there he goes. Evan Bland, Omaha World-Herald. We're back right after this. Nate and I will wrap up our volleyball thoughts. And, of course, we still have Nebraska ball to get to, so plenty more to come here this morning on the KLIN Husker Hour.
Husker football, basketball, baseball, and beyond. This is the KLIN Husker Hour on 1499.3 KLIN.
Big thanks to Evan Bland from the Omaha World-Herald, joining us to chat a little football and volleyball. If you missed Evan, make sure you check out the podcast page at klin.com. You can subscribe at Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, wherever you get your podcasts. And Nate has chatted with Evan about being in that volleyball match. I'm reminded of a college football game, New Year's Day, 1984, where an unbeatable offensive juggernaut of a Nebraska team goes up against this plucky upstart that had never won anything at that highest level of that sport. And one of the Nebraska's best players finds themselves out of the game late, but Nebraska still, improbably, some would say, ties the thing up or gets in position to win it late. And the critical final act, whether it be a 2-point conversion or a fifth set in volleyball goes against Nebraska. In this case, Andy Jackson was not injured like Mike Rozier was in that national championship game 19 season, but she was ineffective and benched late in the fourth and did not step on the court in the fifth, which is just a fascinating post-match what if to think about. But in the end, it's Texas A&M 3, Nebraska 2, and the Huskers finish an amazing season at 33-1. They do have, as was revealed yesterday, the AVCA Setter of the Year in Bergen Riley and Middle Blocker of the Year in Andy Jackson. This is the first year those individual awards have been given out, and Nebraska, deservedly so, gets a couple of those. 4 All-Americans, adding Harper Murray and Rebecca Alec to those two. And an incredible first act for Danny Busboom Kelly in her first season as coach. And yet, it ends the way it ends at the Devaney Center, and all the the memories of this season, I think, unfortunately, after a while will go by the wayside, and people are going to stick on that one instead of the other 33.
Yeah, I think people will be surprised when they kind of scan Nebraska volleyball history and they go, oh, geez, that team in 25 was really good. God, nobody came close to them. What happened? And you talk about the 84 Orange Bowl parallel. And yeah, you have the Andy Jackson decision to keep her out of the game because she wasn't playing well. And they have options. But I mean, you add to it the freak injury to Allie Chet getting injured. You add to it Bergen Riley and apparently others battling the flu. Bergen Riley wasn't 100%. That harkens back to, in preparations for the 84 Orange Bowl, the winter of 83, you look back, it was one of the coldest winters, one of the nastiest winters in Nebraska history. Nebraska was not able to go outside and practice. Well, it was tough to simulate Miami's passing game in the old Schulte Fieldhouse. Thus, when Miami came out and was flinging it around, Nebraska was deficient in stopping the pass anyway, and then they hadn't been able to work on it properly for a whole month. So you have weird circumstances that it's almost like all the good luck that Nebraska accrued and used to get through. And I say good luck not to diminish what they were able to do, but sometimes the other guy serves the ball into the net and gets you out of a bad rotation. Sometimes they try and block one that they really shouldn't.
Sometimes you play Wisconsin without their really good setter. Or
exactly.
Penn State setter quits on the team and enters the portal and is not available all year.
Yeah, exactly. So, that team got a lot of good breaks throughout the year, and it's like they paid for each and every one of those times 4 on Sunday. And unfortunately, those things happen. I think Texas A&M was a little underseeded, but at the same time, they would have been a 2 somewhere. A&M's the quintessential team that has put it all together at the end of the season and is hot and is finishing strong. And, I'm sure Kentucky's going, geez, this is going to be a challenge. And Kentucky needed to go 5 to win their semi, but A&M's playing really well. So these things happen. It dampens this season a little bit, diminishes I don't quite want to go there, and yet you feel like, well, it wasn't a national championship season as was expected most of the year. It's tough not to go to that place in describing this season, this result. That doesn't say, okay, they need to clean house and kick everybody out and all that. It's just one little step that they needed to take, and unfortunately, you feel like this Harper Murray, Bergen Riley, Andy Jackson, senior class, yeah. And boy, does that feel weird to say, needs a national championship to validate what they've done, because they have done literally everything else. They have grown the profile of the sport. They've played bushel baskets full of really good volleyball. They've won 3 Big Ten championships, and though the conference was down this year, it wasn't the first 2 years, and yet they've not been able to finish it off. So I'm really hopeful that they're able to put it all together at the end of the season. I'm sure Danny Busby Kelly is reevaluating things, and there may be a tweak here and a tweak there. You feel bad for Rebecca Alec, who felt like she sweat blood for this program, and she's on the stand. She's at the front of the news conference sobbing, and I felt bad for her because she was somebody who pretty clearly dumped it all out on the floor, and it just didn't end up in a national championship. She has nothing to hang her head about. Although, man, she's going to Madison to play pro volleyball now. But great year, and not a year that you're asking for your money back on, but also they need to finish one of these.
Yeah. Two things that were in A&M's favor, in addition to just how well they played. Number one, they had the confidence of taking down a number 1 undefeated team. They had done it earlier that season. They beat Texas when Texas was still number 1. So they had that in their back pocket. They knew they could play that level, and they did. And then number 2, they had just played in Lincoln last year, and they knew the Devaney Center. They knew the atmosphere. They had 3 matches before to kind of get into their in the right mindset to play in that kind of atmosphere, and so they were ready for all that. So those factors played into it for Nebraska's senior class, and Lainey Choboy included in that group. Yeah. It would be quite the bookend to their careers if they can get a national championship, because remember, their first match as college players was the Memorial Stadium 92,003 attendance match. And if you start your career with that, and you can somehow end it with a national championship after coming up short in the previous 3 years, that would be quite the storybook finish. And you really hope that, whoever they have coming up to fill roles with this next group, whether it's players that were, redshirting or playing bit parts like Tariah Sigler or Manaya Obeche, or maybe it is incoming freshmen, those players, they're going to see how to do it. They're going to learn a lot from Harper Murray and Bergen Riley and Andy Jackson and Lainey Choboy, because they have set a standard. And I think it sucks that you might remember this team for losing 1 match and not the 33 that they won. But on the other hand, that's the standard that this program has set. Right. That they have said, they've come out and said it. It is national championship or bust for this program. That's the expectations that they have, and that's the blessing and the curse. You are that highly thought of. You are blowing everybody away. But if you do come up short when it matters most, unfortunately, that's where it's all going to be kind of laid down. And if you don't get it done, as it didn't get done, that's what the team might be remembered for. And it is tough to have that happen, but when you set that standard for yourself, ultimately sometimes that's what ends up getting remembered. So,
and remember, this is as well resourced a program in volleyball as there is in the country. So to whom much is given, much is expected.
100%. They've got a lot available to them, and we'll see what they can get done in 2026. The national championship match, as you mentioned, is tomorrow. That's Kentucky and Texas A&M. We'll see if the Aggies ride the wave of momentum all the way to their first national championship in their first Final Four. All right, we are not going to be talking about this team for the first time. Nebraska men's basketball, top 15 in the country.
Whoa.
Illinois on the road last Saturday. We did not get a chance to talk about that yet. We'll talk about what Fred Hoiberg's bunch is doing when we come back here on the KLIN Husker Hour.
Talk about
Lincoln's Husker Radio, 1499.3 KLIN.
The stage was set, and Jamarcus Lawrence delivered. And with his three-pointer with 0.2 seconds to go, Nebraska finished up what I think, short of the 1994 Big 8 tournament, Nate, might have been their best week of their entire program's history. The way they took down Creighton and then Wisconsin in blowout fashion at home.
Yeah.
And then you go to Illinois, a team on the verge of the top 10. Some people saying they're a Final Four worthy team, and you dominate them up until the foul trouble at the end of the first half, courtesy of 26 Price Sanford first half points. And then they tie it up, and you still are throwing haymakers at them. And Jared Garcia comes off the bench with 10 critical points. Sam Hoiberg handling the ball and making the right play late, even though he went the wrong way. The way that this team has come out of the gates with the best start in Nebraska history at 11-0, the longest win streak in Nebraska history at 15 games, the first ranked win as a ranked team since 1991. I was 6 years old. I have a 6-year-old daughter.
Huh.
That is wild to me. And what do they do for an encore? Now they're going to play two of the worst 3-rated KenPom teams on their whole schedule in between Illinois matchup and then the one with Michigan State. But boy, Nate, I could not have. We were talking to Kent Pavelka a couple Saturdays ago before the Creighton game. I could not have imagined a world in which Nebraska would have won all 3 of those games and then find themselves ranked 15th in the country, being thrown around as a 4 seed in bracket. Like, what world are we living in? This is incredible. I want to be here for a long time.
Yeah, or at least through March. Up is down, left is right. Indiana is the number 1 seed and the favorite against Alabama and has Heisman Trophy winner. And Nebraska men's basketball is the hottest thing going in college hoops. It's tough to comprehend. I think as we were talking about this 3-game stretch, Creighton, Wisconsin, Illinois, if you would have offered me 2-1, I would have signed for it right there.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been horribly disappointed at 1-2. But the fact that this team put it together, and it was Sanford getting hot to get them going on the road and put Illinois in a little hole. But it was also execution down the stretch against Illinois to get that win, and the fact that this team's stacked up some pretty good wins in November and December. Everything counts, and there's still plenty of time to take this thing off course, but you've got some money put away here. And so these next 2 games, it's about getting through healthy. It's about making sure you're focused. Tighten up the defensive rebounding a little bit, because that was a real problem against Illinois. But make sure you've got the right mindset, the right focus, and get the hell out of there. Because at January 2nd, Jax laughed at me for saying this. I think it's the biggest home game. I think it's the biggest regular season game in Nebraska men's basketball history. I think it is. Bigger than No-Sit Sunday, yes. Because you're talking about, if Nebraska wins this game, they are a legitimate NCAA tournament, not just in the NCAA tournament, but you're talking about a 3 seed. You're talking about Sweet 16. There's stuff happening with this program that has never happened before. And so you can announce your presence, and you're going to have a pretty clear stage on which to do that. So it's a great opportunity for Nebraska men's basketball and Nebraska athletics. Let's face it, we're all disappointed about volleyball. The Daubers a little down on football. This athletic department needs something to give them some juice.
Yeah, they really do. And shout out to Josh Garcia listening and on the StreamYard saying hi on the Facebook stream. You can check out KLIN socials with us every Saturday. Yeah, the Michigan State game. I mean, you're talking about a top 10 opportunity. If you beat Michigan State, you're a top 10 team waking up the next week. And we touched on this after that Wisconsin game last week. We were talking about the next 4 Big Ten games at Illinois, Michigan State at home, and then 2 more road games at Ohio State and Indiana. All top 30 Ken Palm teams. I mean, the fact that you've already got 1 in the bank is great. And now, I mean, you're playing with house money. The Illinois game, that was house money. That was the heat check.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I think you're moving into the next level. Like, for so long, we were talking about, you want this team to build in the Big Ten, to be successful in the Big Ten long term. You need to get old and you need to stay old. I'm watching that beginning of that Illinois game and looking at the starting 5 for Nebraska. It's juniors and seniors, Nate.
Sure.
I mean, the
good ones.
Yeah, this is not a, hey, this team is going to go as, freshman 5-star Bryce McGowan's goes.
Right.
Great talent. Obviously, he's in the NBA, but to build an excellent college basketball team, it's not about, I mean, if you're Duke, whatever, you get all the NBA guys you want, but it's not about having guys who are going to be successful in the NBA. It's about putting together a team that knows their roles, the pieces fit together. You get a Jared Garcia who knows he's not a superstar, but he's going to do the dirty work, get rebounds, give you minutes when Berkay maybe can't go because he got punched in the face for the second time in 2 games. You've got Sam Hoiberg, who is leading the nation in assist to turnover ratio.
Yeah.
Leading the nation. Like, you had a point guard right under your nose the whole time, and you're trying to go find, this is the point guard. Raleigh Wooster's the point guard. It was Sam all along. And
well, it is now. But here's the thing that Fred Hoiberg has developed these guys.
Yeah.
And that goes with Rink Mast, who's gone from a pretty good little player to all Big Ten level. Yeah. Sam's developed. Jamarcus Lawrence, yes, he went away for a year, but he's developed. Birkay Buchtengel has become a pretty good player in 3 years. Braden Frager was a pretty good high school basketball player in Lincoln, but nobody was sitting there saying he's going to play a lot of minutes in the Big Ten as a redshirt freshman. Yeah. And the other part of it is, like you said, get old, stay old. That's advantageous to Nebraska, that, while the Dukes, the Kansases, the big boys are riding the ups and downs of having elite talent for 1 year. And that's their first time away from home in a lot of cases. And it's their first time with a lot of people watching and pressure. Nebraska's got steady. They've got knowledge. They've, and that can beat erratic very often.
Yeah, it's been fun to use tomorrow. It's North Dakota. And you'll see tip-off at 7:00 and pregame. You can hear right here on KLIN starting at 6 with Kent Pavelka and Jeff Smith. It's been a fun ride for KP this season. We'll see if it keeps going into January with that Michigan State game. Women's basketball is doing really well as well. We'll touch on them and get you ready for the weekend next. You're on the Husker Hour.
Husker Hour. Executive Travel Talk is next on 1499.3 KLIN. Your Saturday morning source for everything Huskers is right here. You're listening to the KLIN Husker Hour on Lincoln's Husker Radio, 1499.3 KLIN.
Not only are the Husker men on 11-0 and nationally ranked, but the Husker women are as well. Both of them are in the top 12 of the NCAA's net rankings, which helps sort teams for tournament selection. Britt Prince on fire, Natalie Potts rehab going along, and she might see the floor pretty soon. Nebraska women's hoops is doing it really well as well so far this early season, Nate.
Yeah, developed very nicely. You like the way Britt Prince has stepped forward as a sophomore. Her natural progression has come through very nicely. Amaya Hargrove has developed into a weapon for them. And, Amy Williams may be one of the most, if she isn't the most underrated coach on campus, she's right there because she's done a terrific job in building them, and they're going to be a factor this year.
Yeah, they are. They play tomorrow. That game is 10:30 pregame with 11 a.m. Tip-off. That one's over on B107.3. And then the Husker men, as I mentioned, in action on 6 o'clock pregame, 7 o'clock tip-off. All right, that's going to do it for us. For Evan Bland, for Kenny Larrabee, for Nate Rohr, I'm Cole Stukenholtz. Everybody have a Merry Christmas, happy and safe holiday season. We will see you next weekend for another edition of the KLIN Husker Hour right before the bowl game. Forget about that. Yeah, it's weird times around these parts. All right, go Big Red.